There hasn't been a single moment in my life where I haven't felt Jewish. Being a Jew has always been an intrinsic part of who I am. But what being Jewish has meant to me, however, has shifted dramatically, ebbed and flowed over time. Sometimes my Jewish identity was in the background, a light that was always on, but maybe not the brightest. Sometimes it's been all about losing myself in tradition or rejecting tradition. Other times it's been about faith or lack of faith, values or aspirations, people, food, music, and yes, Israel. But my Jewishness was never the focus of my public life until the spring of 2021. That spring, as you might recall, saw violent clashes between Israelis and Palestinians. These clashes came right in the midst of COVID and at a time when social justice was at the center of many conversations. People felt pressured to make declarative statements on complex issues most of us barely understand. The details of the conflict were confusing, the noise loud from all sides. And in that chaos, I saw an opportunity to maybe help folks, to educate, to foster a more nuanced, fact-based, curious, and considerate examination of the current events, the Jewish experience, and society as a whole. Slowly, I began to dip my toes more and more into this newly discovered role as a filter. I began writing and speaking more about a range of topics regarding the Jewish community. But what has always been at the center of my advocacy is a simple, basic desire for Jews, and really anybody, to openly celebrate and take pride in who we are. Since the horrors of October 7th, I and all Jewish advocates like me have been working in overdrive to put out all kinds of fires, to stem the tide of anti-Jewish hate, to uplift, commiserate, and enlighten. We've been in reactive mode for a year now, which has been important, but I didn't want to lose sight of my core mission. Which brings us to this podcast. Why am I doing this? Why should you bother listening to me? If you're not Jewish, is this show even for you? The show's purpose is threefold. As I said, I want to celebrate what it is to be Jewish, while at the same time educating and dispelling many myths about what being Jewish looks like. There is no wrong way to be Jewish, and I've observed that so many people, Jews themselves included, do not fully understand or appreciate how vast the spectrum of Jewishness is, how different it can feel and look to each individual person while being equally whole and sacred and valid. Number two, we need to normalize Jews talking about Jewish stuff. You don't have to be a rabbi or work at a Jewish organization or have a PhD to discuss being Jewish. It's not uncool, it's not weird, and it shouldn't feel uncomfortable. We have as much right to revel in our personhood as anybody else. There is such a pervasiveness of fear in Jewish culture. After so many centuries of persecution, a seemingly unending historical cycle of hate that is rearing its ugly head in full force today. But we as a people need to push aside that fear and embrace our identity. People respect those who respect themselves. Everywhere you look, there are examples of different groups celebrating their identity, excavating and debating their identity in a way that is natural and wonderful. It's time for Jews to do the same. Third, I wanted to provide notable Jewish public figures and non-Jewish allies with a safe space to explore and discuss their own unique connections to Jewishness. As leaders in their fields, these prominent professionals are rarely given the opportunity to answer deep questions about Jewish identity. And my hope is that in doing so, both my guests and our audience will be enriched by this vibrant and candid experience. As for why should anyone listen to this? Well, we're going to have a good time. This ain't Dateline. We will be delving into meaningful and perhaps serious topics, but it will always be with an air of calm, compassion, camaraderie, and curiosity. We'll also dive into topics outside of the Jewish experience. And best of all, there'll be an opportunity every week for you to ask questions of me and my guests, which we will answer together on air. And finally, I know some of you are wondering, if I'm not Jewish, is this show even for me? The answer is absolutely yes. This show is for everyone. You will learn something valuable, whether it be new facets of your favorite celebrity, new understanding about Jews and Judaism, new ways to look at the world, or maybe just discovering something new in yourself. I've been putting this show together for 9 months now, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be getting started. Thank you for joining me on my Jewish journey and allowing me to be part of yours. This is the first episode of Being Jewish with me, Jonah Platt. I love that theme music. It was written by my friend Gabe Mann, amazing composer, recording artist. Thank you, Gabe. Today, it's our first ever episode, and I am sitting down with someone I've both admired and known for years. He is an actor, a singer, a musician, a writer. You might know him from the Pitch Perfect movies or So Help Me Todd, or the real ones might know him from Broadway hit Spring Awakening. Or maybe a select few know him as the bar mitzvah boy who gave out CDs with his face on them. Welcome, Skylar Astin.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy. I said yes right away, but I did not know that I was also on the inaugural episode.
Yes.
I feel very special.
You should. So the reason I wanted you specifically to be the first guest is really when I was thinking about coming up with this show, I thought about you because you're somebody that I know is proudly Jewish, is connected to their Jewish identity, but has faced pushback at times, or perhaps like not always been able to be comfortably open and talking about Jewish issues all the time. And I really wanted to create a safe space for you and others like you to be able to do that.
Right.
So really, you've been an inspiration.
Hey, thanks, man. I'm happy to be here and talk about being Jewish.
We know each other for a long time. We met, obviously, because my brother Ben was in Pitch Perfect.
Yes.
Skylar, you were in the hospital waiting room for the birth of my second nephew.
That is very true. That is a fun fact.
I know, right?
I was just hanging with Ben, and then I don't know how that actually came up. I think they were like, yeah, my sister's in labor, and it was just up the street, and we were going to hang out after. And he's like, I mean, you could come, and I'm so close with your fam.
Yeah.
And I think I overheard, obviously, your mom on the phone being like, tell him to come. It's going to be a wait. And I'm now one of those guys that could go up to someone and be like, I was there when you were born.
Right.
Literally. Yeah.
Speaking of births, let's go back to the beginning of your Jewish journey as you were growing up as a kid. Like, what was Jewish for you then?
Well, my town was fairly Jewish. I wasn't in a Jewish community by any means, but there were a few temples. There was a Jewish day school, and growing up, since the town over, there weren't really many Jewish people, but I just thought that the world is half and half.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know that I was a minority. I didn't even know much else. I just thought it's do you celebrate Hanukkah or Christmas?
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to Hebrew school, of course, and learned a lot about the history of the Jewish people, that I kind of understood that, and then experienced some of that kind of firsthand.
So you said you went to Hebrew school. How observant were you guys growing up? Would you celebrate? What were the?
We were pretty reform.
Mm-hmm.
I feel I'm very culturally Jewish. We are high holidays people.
Okay.
So we're Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur are kind of the only days we really would go as a family, and then of course for events.
Right.
Bris
life events.
or life events or bar mitzvahs and stuff like that. So we weren't I think in my Hebrew school we did a sukkah for Sukkot and some stuff like that. But I had a very base knowledge other than just kind of the reform curriculum, at my Hebrew school.
Has that shifted at all as you've grown up as an adult, or is it still about the traditions from family? Have you made your own?
It's shifted a little bit, especially kind of recently. I mean, I just we never had Shabbat growing up, just because we weren't that religious. But
right.
I happen to love everything it represents. I love introducing people to Shabbat.
Totally.
And I just think I resonate more with it nowadays, especially as an ethnicity. I mean, I did a 23andMe and it came back Jewish. What other religion does that happen with? And I've seen,
because Jews are not just a religion.
Exactly.
We're a people.
Exactly. And I feel that I understand more, and I'm very prideful of that. And so I carry that with me. Like, as you say, like I'm very open and proud of my identity. Like it's in that kind of way, especially.
Love that.
Yeah.
Have you had any fun Shabbat dinners lately?
But I had a really fun one with my friends Brandon and Angel in like this, they live in like this Tahunga Canyon. It was this like, there's very like LGBT group. So it was like a very like gay Shabbat, which was very fun.
Nice.
And just like, we were just like kind of like messing with the traditions and I don't know, doing a little bit of like witchcraft with it. Like it was just really, it was really sweet and like very, very like welcoming because I don't even think many of the people there were Jewish. Like definitely the people that held it were. And it was just like, it was just such a symbol to me that like Shabbat could be like anything, whatever it means to you. Or at least like that's how I observe it. You know, my family's always been like, you know, come to Hanukkah, come to Passover.
Yeah.
Like you're more than welcome. And that's kind of the part of the traditions that I resonate a lot with.
You and me both.
Yeah.
Going back in time again, you mentioned going to a lot of bar mitzvahs.
Mm-hmm.
Were you bar mitzvahed?
I was bar mitzvahed.
And was there a theme to your party?
There was a theme to my party. My parents, since they paid for it, they chose the theme. So it was like a thing where it wasn't like a controlling thing. I think like I was one of the few like members, like I followed the order in like thinking it's like very important and exciting, but I wasn't like a kid that was like, for mine, it's going to be this and that. And like, so it never really dawned on me what I would do. And I felt that was very fair. They chose
very gracious of you.
For me music and specifically the Dave Matthews Band. It was Skylar and the Dave Matthews Band. So I actually thought they kind of nailed it.
Did you like the Dave Matthews Band or did they like Dave Matthews?
I love the Dave Matthews Band. Okay. So at least like they listened and yeah, no, I don't think they could even sing one single Dave Matthews song. But it was like my centerpiece was like a cutout of me playing like the bass with like Dave Matthews. So yeah, I think I got to see like what happened for my brother Jason. It was like such a fun party and it was such a fun experience. And you know, they had all like the decorations. So I'm very indecisive too. So I was very like, yeah, no, I don't want to know.
Yeah, cool.
And it was fun because like it was like a surprise. Like you walk in the catering hall and they like, you know, show you your like themes.
So you didn't know anything.
Yeah, no, I truly didn't know anything. I had plenty to learn with the Haftorah and all that kind of stuff.
Do you remember any of your?
I don't remember a thing. Right. I mean, I remember the Aliyahs. I remember like certain parts of like, I think the Give a Rote's kind of a banger. Like I always like that one. But yeah, I don't speak much Hebrew, nor do I remember. It was a lot of memorization too,
of course,
because it's truly a tape recorder and you just drilling this.
Right. That's why I was curious, especially as you know, as a musician. Like for me, it's like drilled in there, like row your boat. Like
totally.
It comes right out.
I think I didn't get into like theater especially or really, really seriously into music till like after that time in my life. Like high school, I kind of got into theater. So I think had those synapses has already been firing, it would probably be in there. But at that point I was so nervous. Like, I mean, now I've done theater and all this kinds of stuff, but I was so nervous to be singing or even speaking in rhythm in front of people. Oh, wow. It was like I had a panic attack the morning of my bar mitzvah because I was like, wait, I can't believe I have to do this in front of people. And I've never really been a performer other than like a couple piano recitals, but I could hide behind a piano. This was like front and center, you know, kind of singing, but not. Right. Like you don't want to be that like musical theater boy that's like
you don't want
riffing,
too much vibrato in the Torah portion.
Yeah. But you know, we can carry a tune, so we have a nice tone, obviously, when we sing. So you can't really get away from that. So I remember people thought I did such a beautiful job on my
I'm sure
Torah
you
portion.
did. So, you know, that's very encouraging for folks. If your kids are 12, 13, they're not showing signs of full musical talent yet, they could still turn into Skylar Astin as an adult.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty good.
You never know where your Torah portion can lead you as a kid.
So you were born Skylar Astin Lipstein. Mm-hmm. Very Jewish name. And when you were 15, your agent suggested you drop that name and just go by Skylar Astin. Something many entertainers have famously done before you.
Sure.
What was that decision process like for you?
You know, it's interesting because like in hindsight, I think back to it, and I feel like it seems like more of a serious decision now when you talk about it, because you have to almost explain it. It's like, are you erasing part of your identity? Is there something that you don't like about your name? Because I actually very proudly, I love my last name and I never like shy away from it. And people are like, you know, I really know what your real last name is. I was like, it's not like I'm like, you can't tell. Oh my God, keep this secret for me. It was literally, it was as if someone's like, so you're going to school, you should probably get like a number 2 pencil and you should probably do that. Like they were just like, you should probably change your name. It's just like, seems more of like a more of a stage name sound.
It does.
It is interesting though, because like, I'm not going to be one of those actors that, like 20 years into my career now, I'm going to like change it and really, but I do resonate more with my last name. And I kind of wonder like what would have happened had I questioned that more or didn't do that, you know what I mean? If my career would have been the same, probably, I hope so. I hope it's not just because of my name.
Right.
That would be another issue, I'm sure. But no, it wasn't like that dramatic of a situation. I was just so young and just trying to like get my foot in the door. So I think that just was like, oh, that'll be a good universal sounding name. So I could play a bunch of different kinds of roles. And that was really all that went into that.
So going back to the career, have you ever been in a situation at any point in your career where you were made to feel uncomfortable because you were Jewish?
I mean, there's been a lot of times where I've been told, we're looking for more of that classic all-American look, which I always kind of know what that means. I've been told for like theater things, like I'm like, not white enough or like not and like this is not me playing the violin for myself, but just to answer your question,
of course,
definitely it's definitely come up where they've even kind of said like, oh no, or what happens a lot is I'll sign on to a role and the last name is like McCarthy or like something like that, and then it becomes like Altman or like you know what I mean, or Schoenberg, and like it happens a lot with the Jewish part. And it happens a lot with singing, where there's like nothing, there's no singing in the script, and then immediately in the blue pages, it's like now he sings a song.
Well, you got to work with what you got.
Sure,
you got the talent. You got to use it.
It's fine. I mean, I like signing up for things knowing I'll be singing rather than like it's
surprise.
Like,
you have a solo.
Yeah, we're doing because it's not even a musical or it's not even a thing where the character would ever sing. But now he has like a hobby where he also has like an a cappella group or something like that. And I'm like, that's not how that works. That's the only time that's ever frustrating. And then the Jewish thing, it tends to happen. And then there's like a plethora sometimes of like Jewish jokes, and sometimes that's not really written by a Jewish writer, which isn't the best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it puts me in kind of an uncomfortable situation where I'm like, hey, like I'm fine doing this, but like why, you know what I mean? Or can we not make that about, could we just know Jewish stuff? It could be his name or something like that. And then I always worry that kind of makes me seem like I'm now not wanting to,
that's
resonate.
the totally tricky calculus about it. It's like you want to be able to advocate for yourself, especially with other groups. There's a very clear line about writing jokes for other minority groups or whatever. But with Jews, there tends to be a little more leniency towards that because, as David Baddiel famously says, Jews don't count.
Totally.
Oh, this is a good segue because I want to ask you about on-screen representation. On-screen, especially in this past year, we saw a lot of examples of famous historical Jews being played by non-Jews. And as I always say, it's not like it's like a 50-50. It's like all of them are non-Jews. So, we had Bradley Cooper, we had Helen Mirren, we have the Funny Girl tour.
Totally. I think that Jewish people should be playing Jews, especially when it's just like every other minority, like especially nowadays. Like, people understand the error of their ways in the past. Like, God, what were we thinking? Why were we casting, Jonathan Pryce and Miss Saigon or like, things like that? It's like, well, Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's. And, I think Sarah Silverman like mentioned like Jew face.
Right.
And it's, there's prosthetic noses and there's just all sorts of things that are they really don't feel helpful and they feel like quite the opposite. And I even answering this question, I feel like I have to like make a bunch of disclaimers, being like, not saying, but like, why can't I actually just say like that it does bother me?
I try to take it a little bit on a case by case basis. There are some times where I'm more okay with it than others. For example, like with the Helen Mirren one, when I think about it, I'm like, who's going to get that movie made?
Right.
And she's like, she spent time in Israel. She knows the family. She had the blessings of everybody. Totally. And there's only so many people in the world who are at a Helen Mirren level in that age range and whatnot. But then I'll see something like I saw a production of the Lehman Brothers trilogy. The Lehman Brothers are 3 Jewish European guys. All 3 guys were clearly not being played by Jewish people.
I mean, the Helen Mirren thing should be the exception to the rule.
It should be the exception.
And I think more often than not, that's not even remotely it. It's just like one of many.
Yeah, I mean, like, right, the ratio right now is so incorrectly skewed, where it's like they all go to non-Jews as
Right.
opposed to like
Exactly.
every once in a while a Helen Mirren plays a role like that. It's always.
I always say the thing of like, if people say that Jewish people run Hollywood, they're not putting them as the leads though, especially when it's about that.
I think like the core misunderstanding at the heart of that and like all the Jewish issues we face today is the misunderstanding that Judaism is just a religion
Right.
that a bunch of people share, and not that Jews are a person, that it's an ethno-religion, that
Exactly.
it's a tribe. And I feel like if people had that understanding, it could really filter in an important way into things like this.
Yeah.
But people are like, what's the big deal? It's just like a religion. It's like, why a Jew can play Christian, Christian can play a Jew. What does it matter?
Totally. I've never seen like any other group where people try to tell you what they are more than Judaism.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's like the gall, of some
Seriously.
people to just be like, well, you're not this, you're this. And it's actually only this. And people think, and it's, I don't know what it is. I mean, I'm sure we could talk, at length about where it stems from and why, but that always kind of blows my mind, especially lately.
Totally.
When people try to really explain something that you're like, hey, this is like in not only my DNA, but it's like I've went to school for this. I've read up on this for so many years because it directly involves my people.
I had a social media person into my comments recently, trying to convince me of something I wasn't going to be convinced of, being like, well, you should read this book. And I was like, all right, you be Jewish for 37 years. I'll read that book and then we can have a conversation.
Exactly, right. I mean, I appreciate people at least reading a book and trying rather than just, but no.
We know what's up.
Right.
We know ourselves.
That's true.
So in 2022, you did a special called Recipe for Change, which I watched and was really fun. First, like, what was that experience like? It was like such a cool, unique thing they put on.
It was so cool. We ate at Nancy Silverton's house, who's just like this incredible world-renowned
so ridiculous.
chef. It was
so you get to
so cool.
eat a home-cooked meal in Nancy Silverton's house.
That in and of itself is very special. But then just the conversation and just being with people, it was really nice. It was obviously pre 10/7.
Yeah.
And so it was just a slightly more wholesome chat about combating anti-Semitism. And it just felt like it just had such good intentions and everyone was, on the same page just on kind of historical anti-Semitism and how there's still so much today, and just people more celebrating all kinds of Mizrahi Jews, Sephardic Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, people's connection to people in Israel, and it was just a wonderful Shabbat dinner. Honestly,
It's so cool.
that was recorded with cameras and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm glad because people got to see it. I think it got nominated for an Emmy. But yeah, it was an amazing thing to be a part of.
It was really fun to watch. But what struck me was like it seemed like the impetus for that show was the insane rise in anti-Semitism.
Right.
And this was 2022.
Right.
And Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL, who was at the dinner, he goes into like, it's doubled, it's tripled. It's like, it's increasing. And that was 2 years ago.
Right.
So like, how crazy and how different does it feel now from 2 years ago when you literally did a special because of a rise in anti-Jewish hate?
Right. Well, I think like it was actually 2021 when there was a flare up in Gaza.
Yes.
When I kind of really went headfirst and like really wanted to get an understanding. It was actually funny is that still with just so much research, so much reading, so much like intel from all sides of everything to really get a good understanding, I still don't consider myself remotely an expert or someone who remotely can like, stand on a soapbox. And though I feel like I entered the conversation a lot sooner than a lot of people of today. Something I've said on social media is just like, whether or not you believe in the government over there, whether or not, no matter what, like it's no excuse for the attacks, for any, people should not be scared to go in their place of worship, but people don't realize that Jews have had that feeling since before 10/7. I mean, like there's a lot of metal detectors and things like that.
I think about it every time I'm driving on a Sunday morning and I see everybody walking out of church and hanging out on the steps.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, we have like concrete barricades there and we got armed guards and bulletproof glass there.
Yep. It's a necessity, unfortunately, and it has been, and it's just something. Just like, again, like to your point of having 37 years of being Jewish rather than reading one book, like we know this, like we've been told it. And then we've now lived and experienced this. I sometimes in New York, I deliver food to Holocaust survivors, and I was speaking to one
That's awesome.
just after 10/7. Thank you. And it feels like the least I could do, and just to hear these stories. And we weren't even talking about 10/7, though it was on the news. And he was just like, asking him all sorts of questions about his experience. Really, they're just offering up so much and telling so much. And he says, tears in his eyes. And he's like, the question I keep asking myself to this day is why?
Mm.
And it was just so sad, because to really know the innocence of so much of the people who have experienced the worst forms of anti-Semitic hate, that is something that I thought at 8 years old, when I was in Hebrew school, when I was first learning about Kristallnacht and the Holocaust and the pogroms. I was just like, why? I just don't understand it, especially now going back to what I said of like thinking that I'm like half of the world.
Right.
So I'm just like, wait, why the people that celebrate this, people just hate them just because that? I mean, it's my very base knowledge. But now, years later, almost 30 years later, like I still find myself asking that question. And so does this poor man who has every reason to have his own theories. You want to talk conspiracy theories? And he still it boils down to like, why?
It's very poignant, because it is so true. I'm sure most Jewish people have that thought cross their minds often, just like, why us?
And even saying this on camera in this medium, I feel like, oh, well, people think we're playing the victim and we're victimizing.
Right. And anytime you say anything,
that's even ingrained. But truly, at the core of it, like you talk to your Jewish friends and neighbors and people that were scared, especially like, in the first few months after the attack. It's there's a sense of fear, but also a sense of security and feeling like you're not alone in that fear of like, why is this happening? What's going on? Like, why are people like, when I was a little bit more active on social media about everything, like I would say something and hold space for everyone involved. You know what I mean? And really see things not so black and white the way I actually do see them, and make just a really important distinction about how just because, people are not their government, and how, that directly translates to anti-Semitic attacks in California, in Australia, rallies, and like, do we see what this spread is? And just to kind of point that out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've seen the most bulletproof, distinctions you can make. You're met with the meanest, most horrible, frightening things that anyone's ever said about you, and it's flooded, and it's like it's not like, it hasn't discouraged me, but it really realized that, like, it made me realize that I don't know what it's doing actually, if it's helping, if it's hurting. It made me feel very confused actually.
What, you posting that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like look, I'll always stand up for what I believe in, but to continue to make those distinctions, especially since it's kind of all on the same theme, I was like, I don't know if this is, and forget about like me being attacked and like, oh, I don't want to lose followers. It wasn't about that. It was like, I just feel like it felt almost like I was stirring up more hate by trying to bring awareness to it, which was just a weird feeling. It's not saying like, so now I don't, or whatever. It was just a weird, it made me like lose a little bit of faith in that, like in just people, I guess. Yeah. So it's been like, I guess a really troubling time, because I haven't gone away from the conversation. I just have them off social media.
Yeah.
And I have them with people who are, sometimes willing to listen. I just don't ever want it to get to a shouting place, because that's not where I'm like entering this conversation from. But it really quickly becomes that, and really quickly from people who are not involved at all.
Yeah, they're always the loudest. The people who have no skin in the game whatsoever.
Right.
Who think they know the most about it.
Be, they can feel passionate with their empathy for what they think is happening, or for only the one side of the story that they may know, or just actually the blatant disregard to actually really learn what's happening in any real true context, because it just fits a very comfortable mold for them just about who we are.
Yep.
I like to say, like, I don't think like Hitler would have really cared if you believe in God. He would have killed you because it's in your blood.
We know that's true.
So
didn't matter if you never picked up a prayer book in your life.
Exactly. So when people say it's just a religion, it's like, well, it's actually it's really complicated. And I've just been doing a lot of soul searching about that, and like nothing has changed. In fact, I'm more proud and more willing to have these conversations. And the only reason why I'm not banging my chest on social media, because it's a really destructive conversation. Also, it's really devastating.
Yeah.
Because in trying to say anything, you can't deny the horrors on both sides, just like the devastation and the pain and the little suffering and the death. It's a really awful conversation. So to be like beating your chest super hard, like in either way, is just it's a weird stance. I appreciate everything you do, and I've told you so much. Like I learn a lot. You know what I mean? I appreciate you saying what you say, because sometimes I can't like boil my thoughts down the way you can. I think your mom and I talked about you becoming an accidental activist.
Yeah.
She told me that.
Yeah.
Which I think that's kind of apropos for what you've got going on. I mean,
here we are now.
Yeah, literally.
I will say, as somebody who spends a lot of time talking to people and Jews on social media, you know, you ask whether you're helping or not. I know for sure that there are people that you are helping when you put that stuff out. People who feel seen and empowered and braver by seeing you. And you know, when I post stuff and people will say something to that effect, I'm like, it doesn't feel like I'm being like brave or something. It just feels like I'm saying what I want to say. But people do feel emboldened by it, and they're like, wow, you know. And I know that you are reaching people when you do say stuff. The part that's tricky is it's like, you know, I've posted or been a part of posting something that has like nothing to do with the conflict whatsoever, but is
of course
even tangentially related to being Jewish, and you're getting comments about the conflict on it.
I could say Happy Rosh Hashanah, and I'll get, well, what about the people? And it's like, that's, you know, again, what other people would you ever have the nerve to do that with? But yeah, it is tough. But you're right. Like I feel so much for Jewish young people and people in colleges experiencing just like really, really brutal anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can lend a voice and let them know that like I am one of you and that you are not alone, and that like I felt versions of that in my own life, like then it is absolutely worth it. It feels like a responsibility to be, you know, people don't understand how few Jewish people there are in the world, and then on top of that, how many people have like influential voices that can and platforms. So it does feel like something that I definitely stand by everything that I say.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So on the flip of that, as you're looking around, you know, the entertainment industry, how does it feel to see, you know, certain colleagues perhaps taking to the airwaves with anti-Israel or anti-Jewish sentiment? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's really when the issues get very conflated, and I feel read up enough and knowledgeable enough to know when something is blatantly anti-Semitic. And I think that that's a word that has even been like weaponized, and now people tell you what anti-Semitism is. I mean, again, like what other group is someone telling you not only what you are, but like what actually being racist towards you or it is and looks like. Like some people out there that I'm just like, I've never like you are posting about lunch and hating Jews. That's it. That's your whole social media. Come to my show. Also, Jews are horrible. You know, here's my baby. Also, Jews are horrible, which is just it was heartbreaking, honestly.
Yeah,
it was really heartbreaking.
It's so tough to see.
I think even before Israel retaliated, how many people were like just providing this context of just, you know, the most brutal attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust, and people were non-Jewish, people were American, as we know, and like all sorts of countries. And I don't know, there's just, it really quickly snapped into this like very comfortable Western narrative of oppressed versus oppressors and white settlers versus colonized people. And it just, and you couldn't get a word in edgewise all of a sudden.
Yeah.
That was my experience with it.
And have you had to come face to face or work with any of these people in this time? People that know hold these sentiments?
I have.
How does that go?
This is the first time I've spoken about it, and that's pretty much all there is to it. I haven't said a word.
Yeah. Are you thinking it while you're doing what you have to do? Or you're able to like put that away. I'm like, I'm here to do a job. I'm going to do the job.
I'm a professional.
Right.
Like I protect my professionalism by not engaging because I'm not an expert. I don't know how composed I can stay.
Right.
I think if I were to have a conversation, I would be prepared to make sure I was the most composed. And I just don't think it belongs in a professional setting. If someone said something that was absolutely insane in my,
in your presence.
But it is crazy to see someone post something 14 minutes ago when I'm literally at work with you. And it's like, it never crossed your mind. You know me. I wear a business every day, but like that it's so important to you that you overlook that. So there you go. That is your profile. That is your voice. That is your right, I guess. But I'm going to be over here keeping it professional because I think that that's just how I want to operate in that situation. Because I just think I would get really upset.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't belong at work.
And I'm glad you share that. I think understanding what that experience is like and what that calculus is really important for people to hear.
Sure. I've shut it down a few times.
What do you mean?
Like I've given like a don't go there look, or like or someone says something that's like blatantly just something that they shouldn't say. I'm good at shutting things down fast without saying something rude or a curse word or something like that. And I think like that's enough. That enough has been like a you don't want to go there kind of a thing. No threats, of course, but like just a real sign of like, and I think people know better too because they don't want to be doing that at work either.
Right.
So
it's like you said, they don't even think about it.
Right.
That this is going to be somehow offensive to you.
Right.
Which is crazy.
Someone would said something at work like I've known a lot of Jewish people. I know how to say that like word. It was like a shalom or something like that. I was like, I think I know more than you know what I mean. It was like something like I'll do it in jest because it is. Right. It's funny. And by the way, like in that moment, that person wasn't being anti-Semitic. That person wasn't being bad.
Matters, and the way you know a person that matters.
That was just me kind of like standing up for my identity in that moment in that group setting. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people would do that and should do that to me if I was mansplaining someone's ethnicity or religion or something like that, and they'd say, "I think I would know," and I would go, "You're right." You know what I mean? So it's like that is the most I've ever kind of engaged, especially at the workplace.
Nice. Have you ever been to Israel?
I have not.
Never.
And I've always wanted to. It's been like an absolute dream of mine. I was always working. I always wanted to.
Right. I mean, you've been working professionally since what age?
It's like 15. I think the birthright age is what, like 16?
I think 17? It's 18.
18. Okay. My sister did it. She had the best time ever. Yeah. She always talks about it. And it's been like a dream of mine to go. I've always wanted to. And it was like very, very top of my bucket list to go to. So I will definitely go.
I'm going in like 2 weeks if you want to go.
Are you actually?
Yeah.
I can't in 2 weeks, but but no, I will definitely be.
All right, we'll talk. I'll help you get there.
Okay, good.
You have written a script called The Hanukkah Guy.
Yes.
Tell me about The Hanukkah Guy.
I just wanted to make that like kind of classic, the Santa Claus Jingle All the Way kind of Christmas movie, but family, but with Hanukkah.
Important question.
Yeah.
How do you spell Hanukkah? CH or H?
I do the Smokey Robinson Chinooka.
Chinooka.
Yeah, the CHANUKAH.
What was that clip from? When did he call it Chinooka?
He called it Chinooka, which is very sweet. He was like making a cameo for someone. And he was just like, I don't know what Chinooka is, but happy Chinooka. And it's just like so.
I love that. I've seen that a bunch of times. It's
the
so
least
funny.
Offensive, funniest thing. So it's just so wholesome and we love it.
Also, the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, as you mentioned earlier, it's right around the corner. What are your Jewish New Year resolutions?
Ooh.
Or wishes for the new year?
Poof. I mean, peace in the world. And for me personally, I want to be on my phone a little less. That's actually kind of like a Jewish New Year and a regular New Year thing. just for the times where I just don't need to be.
Yep.
And I don't know, just happy and healthy. Just a sweet little apple and honey New Year.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing I want to do is we're going to take some questions and comments that our followers have left for us on the Being Jewish podcast Instagram. Okay, here's an important one from Melissa_9797. Challah, rip or slice?
Rip. I mean, well, I'm a ripper, terror breaker. Like when I snack in anything, I'm just very like, there's always crumbs whenever I've eaten there. Sliced for the like for the Shabbat or Rosh Hashanah, or because my mom always makes challah French toast the next day, which is incredible.
That is exactly why I prefer a slice, because I make it in the mornings for my kids on Saturday.
Yes. But
and when if you rip it to shreds, you got no French toast.
Exactly. So when it's home turf, it's got to be sliced. But I went to Shabbat recently where it was like kind of a tear situation.
Yeah, rip and pass.
Well, then you can kind of get a big chunk for yourself.
Yeah. I feel like the best move is the combo where you're ripping half of it off and then you slice a little bit off to save for the French
rip
toast.
And slice. Exactly.
Nice. Paige Megan asks, who is your favorite wrestler?
My favorite wrestler.
Wow, you came so fast. Ready with that?
Yeah. Well, my childhood favorite wrestler was Shawn Michaels. My screen name was Heartbreak Kid, which was his nickname.
I watched some WWF back in the day.
And nowadays, probably he's like the most popular. But I think Roman Reigns is incredible. So the tribal chief, I acknowledge him that's for the one person who got.
You really know your wrestling.
I'm still very involved. I love it. It's my soap opera.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
As a Camp Ramaquoit alum who had you lead song for my color war team, I'm eternally grateful. What's your take looking back on your summer camp experiences? Asks Rachel Rothman. So I need to know what leading song means, and I want to know about summer camp.
I think she means So we used to do Rama games, which was like kind of a color war where like the camp was divided into 4 teams. There was red, blue, yellow, gold, and white. And there was always a theme every year. And so at the very end of camp, like the last week, the whole camp would be like divided into 4 teams and you can compete in everything. I mean, it's like a field day Olympics kind of a situation where you could be going head to head in basketball or baseball, but also just like the spoon races. Totally. And even
we did this at my camp too.
Yeah. So even like, by the way, we're on a podcast called Being Jewish, explaining summer camp to people. I'm sure people understand it, but basically like at the very end, there's song and cheer. And that's when you do like a, Third Eye Blind song, but you make it about your team name.
Right.
So there was always a theme. So if the theme was Hollywood, there'd be like famous Hollywood movies of that time. So it was like the green, the yellow Batman Forevers or whatever. Probably something that probably fit the color a little bit more.
That dated us right there.
Yeah, it sure did. It's 1994. Yeah. So that's when this was. So
sure.
I probably, being one of the kids who could sing, I remember leading a song in cheer, but maybe I did.
I don't know. She thinks you did.
Yeah, I must have. And yeah, you just sing like dummy lyrics to a pop song.
So you didn't write the lyrics?
Definitely didn't, because those were like the lieutenant generals and the generals.
We had a whole hierarchy.
The staff, the counselors. The counselors who were then put in charge of the team, they would write it. And we would perform it with so much heart and soul. Sure. It was so funny because this is before I ever did any theater or singing. And this is like it's not a theater camp, which I've also then went to later in life. This is like a camp where it's like, hey guys, we're going to sing and I need to see passion and I need to see volume. And because I remember there was a big point allowance for the song and cheer winners. It's kind of like whoever wins song and cheer, you're going to have a good chance at the end.
Wow.
So Rachel, I'm glad you still remember that.
Amazing. Amanda_Palin asks, do you have any dream Jewish Broadway roles?
I don't know. There's not a ton.
It's not a wealth of options.
There's Parade, like Ben just did, which is a great role and a great sing.
Sure.
Maybe like in my 40s, I could do Tevye. That could be fun.
Yeah.
I think I've outgrown the other roles now.
Yeah.
Other than that, is that the two?
Joseph,
I like Joseph. I always kind of wanted to do Joseph. That was my first musical I ever saw. And maybe I'll be the first male Fanny Bryce. And there you go.
Boom. I'd watch that.
Yeah.
Last question from Jewish Fertility Foundation.
Okay.
What is your go-to shower song? Do you have a go-to shower song?
I don't have a go-to shower song. It's sometimes I put my speaker up, like a waterproof speaker that I'll put in the shower, so I'll just kind of shuffle. But I love singing along to Bruno Mars. I love singing along to Justin Bieber.
Are you a shower singer in general?
So, yeah, I'm a shower singer like anyone's a shower singer. I don't think it changes based on your ability. Yeah. It's like people are like, are you someone who just like randomly sings? It's like, yeah, because like just everybody. Because I sing, like everybody, but I'm not like really committing. I'm just, it's similar like when you're in the car, karaoke, you're kind of just singing along.
Yeah. Skylar, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been a dream first episode, and thank you for being so open and honest about everything.
Of course.
I'm just so happy you were here.
I'm so happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me. I'll be back for sure.
Right on.
100th episode.